Hi, and welcome to episode 120 of the Heartland Knits podcast. My name is Vicki, but you can find me as Heartland Knits on Ravelry and Instagram and Periscope. And today is Sunday, October 11th, 2015. Happy Thanksgiving out there to all the Canadian viewers. This is their Thanksgiving weekend. I have a lot to be thankful for this weekend too, because today marks the exact 4-year chemoversary. I had my last chemo 4 years ago today, so that's a big thing to be thankful for, that I'm still around after all those years. But this is a knitting podcast, so I like to kind of slide right into the knitting right away. And I will start off with what's on my needles. I'm going to show you a new project. I'm still working on all the other projects, but this was one that I started in October. It's not that far along, but it is probably one that I'm going to pick up and sort of try to work on more now, and I will show you what. It's probably one that you've heard me, I'm sure I've shown it on the podcast before, but it is a sweater by Elizabeth Zimmerman, and it's the hand-to-hand cardigan. So it is this. It's like a big kind of a sweater coat. It's called the hand-to-hand. And this design is like a lot of Elizabeth's things. They're kind of in multiple places. I'm kind of going on the one that's in this book, Knit One, Knit All. But it's called the hand-to-hand because you start at the wrist and knit up across your back and then down the other side, and then you pick up stitches around and knit down. So it's hand-to-hand. And for this, I am using some Bartlett yarns, and it's looking more purple on my screen. It's a really pretty blue. It's their color called Lake Blue. And this is the 2-ply, like worsted weight. And so I have the start of a sleeve. I started this, during the summer because this was kind of yarn that I bought last year that was in the running to knit the big Elizabeth Zimmerman coat. And I knew if I didn't use it for that coat, I would use it for this sweater because I've wanted to knit this sweater for years, and it would, come around and I wouldn't have like just the right yarn that I wanted for it. And I have another sweater out of this yarn. I did Meg's Lupin sweater out of the Bartlett yarns. And it's a little, it can be hard on your hands to knit with. But it makes in the finished, like after it's like washed and blocked, it makes this really great fabric. It almost feels like velvety. I really like it. I wore that Lupin sweater all the time last winter, so I think I will really love this. So this is why I'm like picking this one up and gonna like try to knit on it. I'm gonna be knitting on other things too because it can be harder on your hands. But I would like to have this done kind of before it gets too cold to sort of wear it. And this is the kind of sweater that I like. I like to have these kind of big like sweater coat kind of things so that I wear them instead of a jacket. I have rules of in my life that because I live in the north and winter is long and I hate it. So if I'm not wearing a winter coat or winter jacket, it doesn't count as like winter in my life. So I try to like hold it off as long as I can. And so sometimes you can, but I won't wear a winter jacket or coat until after Christmas. Unless it's a rare December, and sometimes it happens where we get a big snowfall and then the temperature plummets and it's way below zero, then you have to. But as long as the temperature is above 20, I will wear a sweater instead of a coat. So anyway, this is the start of my sweater, the sleeve. I think you can see the cable pattern in there. It's got like this plaited cable, and so this is the start of my sleeve. It's done it in garter. Doing it flat, and then you'll sew that seam because this is how it's written, because you can, so that you're doing the garter. I don't want to have to do the purling. And I know there is that, Meg came up with the sew as you go technique where you like wrap it and like turn and go the other direction. But to me, it just doesn't match up, enough that I'm satisfied when I sew that seam, it gets to look seamless. So short rows because, garter has a more compressed row gauge. So you're doing short rows. I'm just doing wrap and turn short rows because with the garter, you don't have to worry about picking up the wraps. It's just, simple and easy. And so that is sort of my on the needles that I'm going to show you, because I have an off the needles, and I'm sure you're guessing what that is. I finished the sweater that I was working on, and this is the Garland necklace yoke sweater by Meg Swanson. So I finished that. It's all done. I love how it turned out. I would be wearing it today, but we are having that totally rare day in October where it's in the mid-70s. So I finished it just in time. It'll get cold. It's going to get a lot of wear. And actually the top portion, I sewed the buttons on yesterday and and cut the steek. But the top portion, the yoke portion, hasn't been blocked. I did the blocking on the body and the sleeves before putting it and knitting the yoke so that I could make sure I had the right length for those. And but I didn't do the top because I knew I wanted to show it on the podcast, and I knew it wouldn't be dry because this yarn, just for being such a lightweight yarn, it takes longer to dry than practically everything that I've knit. So I love it. It fits just like I wanted it to. It is going to get a lot of wear. This is, I used unspun Icelandic for both the yoke color and the body color. And there were a couple things, and I did a little bit different. The pattern as it's written is a pullover, but I wanted to do a cardigan just because this is the kind of thing that I will wear more. And I did these cables on the cuffs and the bottom. I put short rows 3 places in this sweater. So I put them in, and I tend to do this in almost all my sweaters, is I put some short rows in the body of the back so that the back is just slightly longer than the front. And that is to prevent, as they say, dreaded riding up, so that, like sometimes you don't want, the back to come up. So you just do it, a few rows longer, and that solves that problem. And then there were short rows right after. I did about 3 rounds after joining the sleeves in with the body. I did about 3 rounds, and then I did 5 sets of short rows to make so that the neck is lower. And so you go around, you're knitting around, and you stop here, and then you knit, or turn and go back to here, and then go back and a little bit less and a little bit less and then so for those I tried German short rows, just because that is the newest technique for me. There's like 4 kinds that I know of ways of doing short rows: the regular wrap and turn, yarn overs, Japanese short rows, and now German short rows. And I think there's like times and places that I use all of them. So it's good to like know them all, and then you can just sub in the one that you want to use. And so when I did the yoke of Forest Darkness, I used the German short rows also, and I did those for this too. I like how they look. I think my favorite will still probably be Japanese short rows, but you know, everybody has their own, you know, that you like to do. And then I did some additional short rows in the kind of like neckband. So if you see how it's, you can't read how many ridges there are. 4 ridges here, and there's only like 2 here. I kind of wish I'd done one more in the back, but it's fine. Just so that it, you know, would lift that up a little bit higher in the back of the neck. I didn't want it to be too high because this is a scratchier yarn, and so if I'm just wearing like a t-shirt, I didn't want it to, you know, be rubbing on my neck. I could wear like my sleeves inside of this and no problem, but the back of your neck is just a little more sensitive, I think. And then let's see, what else did I want to tell you about this? I did a crochet steek. I had a 5 stitch steek, and I think, and when I was cutting it, I had thought about, I finished up like working all the ends in and stuff. I like to do that before, and I always put on my button bands before I cut the steek. So I did a crochet steek. So I did the crochet on the stitches, and then I picked up the button band stitches and knit those on, and got all that done. And then I work all the ends in, and then I cut the steek. Just because, you know, just in case you wanted to do something, you know, you wanted to change how it was, then there's less stress on the cut edge when you're doing it. And so I finished that on Friday night, and so that's what usually happens as I'm working the ends in, and I think, oh, I want to see if, you know, like, and you put it on right after you cut it, and it's like a cardigan all of a sudden. And I thought, no, I should periscope, you know, me cutting up the steek, because I know it scares a lot of people. You know, it scares you until you do like a couple, and then it becomes sort of like, it's all right. You know, it's not. The first ones are scary. Because usually you spend a lot of time knitting a sweater, and you don't want anything to happen to it. So I thought about, oh, I should periscope that. And then it came around to Saturday morning, and I thought, I have to like figure out how to set it up, you know, set it so that, you know, it could, you know, be like elevated from looking from above. And I kind of knew how I wanted to do it. But then if I wanted to, because this was a 5-stitch steek, so there were, you know, the 2 black ones, or these 2 were black, these 2 were pink, and this was a black one. So you crocheted half of a stitch of the pink to this half of, you know, of this one, and then half of a stitch of this one to this one, and then you cut up the middle. And I think that's the first time I've done it exactly like that. I usually do like more of a like a 7-stitch steek, so that I'm still cutting up that middle stitch, but these 2 are so if I have 7 stitches, these 2 are put together, and these 2 are crocheted together, and then so I have a half a stitch kind of in between. And actually, the ones that I do like on the bohos and stuff, I do it Joyce Williams style, where it's an even numbered, so that you have, so if you have like the black and the pink, you would cut up right in between 2 colors. I have bad eyes. I don't want, and so you have to just make sure you don't cut to, you know, nick the crochet. But you know, this is really, and actually when it was funny because I had done a line when I was knitting it with just a piece of scrap yarn that I kind of swung back and forth to mark rows, but also to mark the center line so that I would know it was a straight line. I wasn't veering off anywhere when I was doing the crochet. And so when I was cutting up that line, it was just a piece of sock yarn that I used, and it had sort of felted that into the fabric just because, when I was knitting it, it was warm and just, that's how much this stuff will felt, because it's Icelandic, so there's lots of little hairs and things. So, so anyway, I ended up not periscoping it just because I really had it like up to my nose, looking at it. So it really wouldn't have worked. So I will like try to, I don't know if it's going to show. So that is my, the pink, and this black line is the crochet. And I have it like just tacked down. When you do the crochet stick, it just kind of folds back, and so that you see that where I crocheted in the black, so you see that you don't have to tack it down, but I like to. I mean, I had the black thread out to sew on the buttons, so it's just like you whip stitch that down. It didn't really take very much time. Because then it will, if I didn't sew it down, it would quickly fell down. So anyway, the bands are like little narrow bands, and I did the same, I did the double start of the Latvian cast on for the bottom, the cast on edges, and there is a sew and bind off that matches that exactly, that is in Joyce Williams' book, and she calls it Latvian bind off. So I really wanted to do that matching, so that the edges would all match, but it's a sewn bind off, and this is the, when you want to graft or sew anything with the unspun, it's possible you just take your sewing needle and like twist it to build up twist in the yarn, and then you take a few stitches and you twist some more. You can't add like too much twist because then it gets all kinky, but that's a long edge because I went all the way, from the bottom up and around down the other side. So that's like a long strand of yarn that you're going to sew all those stitches. And so, and because that is like a doubled strand, I thought, well, what difference does it make if I have I apply a little bit of that yarn up and make it would be a doubled strand. So what I ended up doing was just with a spindle, I added twist into a single and did a length with a spindle, and then just wound it off on made a center pull ball on my hand and applied it together, so that I had applied yarn to do all the sew and bind off, and it worked perfectly. I don't know why I didn't think of doing that when I was casting on, because I didn't. It was much more precarious to do the cast on because I didn't have any twisted. You're like trying to like pull those, tighten up the stitches and stuff. So, what else? Oh, I wanted to tell you this. So that I can't really show it because I don't think it would show, but the button band is like, narrow. This is, one side of it. It's like 2 ridges wide plus the cast off. And so when you're going to put on a garter band onto like stockinette, instead of kind of going the direction like you usually pick up stitches, you usually start at the bottom, like right edge, and then work up. If you start at the bottom of the left edge and pick up kind of in one side of the edge stitch, it picks up so that there's like a little ridge, like a garter ridge, like right next to the fabric of the stockinette, so that it stays nice and firm to the side, where otherwise you pick up the stitches and then you're going to do a garter. There's like a one, like a valley, you know how garter has like a ridge and then a valley. So otherwise, if you pick up the normal way, it starts with a little valley and then you add the ridge on. The ridge is right next to the fabric, and I think it makes it like a little firmer, and it looks really, really nice. And I learned that from doing Meg's Lupin sweater. That's how she picked up stitches on that. And I love how that works. And I think that is everything. Oh, the other thing I was going to say is about the color work. A couple weeks ago, I was talking about color, or the dominance of in color work, and like which yarn you hold underneath and which yarn you hold on top, and like there's pattern color or background color or whatever. This was an instance where you would say, well, the pink is probably the pattern color. But really what I wanted to pop out of this is these lines, like here, they're like one stitch lines of the black. And I wanted those to pop out. I didn't want those to recede in the back because, otherwise it wouldn't, really be as effective. So on this particular one, I did the black as my underneath color and the pink over the top. And I really like how that looks. And I also had wanted to say, like when you kind of like play with that, think about it. And I know I did, I've done this with mittens where say the back of the hand has, those hummingbird mittens that I did last spring. I did it with those. So they had like the white background and then the bird was the kind of purpley blue color. And so the bird I wanted to pop out for the back of the hand. But on the palm side, it was the blue color and it had like little white, like diamond, patterning. But so for the palm side, I wanted the white to pop out. So actually on the side of the hand, I would switch it. So that one side I would have, one color underneath, and the other side I would switch it and put, the dark color underneath the white was on. So these are the things that I love about knitting. The little, what Meg Swanson always calls knitting minutia. Just the little things that you can like play with and just refine down and stuff. So this is done. I'm really happy. If I was going to Rhinebeck, this would be my Rhinebeck sweater. So I'm not going, so it's maybe my non-Rhinebeck sweater, but even if we're not going, we can knit a sweater. It will get a lot of wear. So I think it was Oki Lynn who asked in the Ravelry group, she asked, what my favorite sweater was that I've ever knit. And I thought about it. I thought about that question a lot because I've been knitting a long time. I've knit tons and tons of sweaters. And, I have a lot of favorites. But what I would say is this kind of sweater is probably my favorite type of sweater. So I told you I have like rules of, when I wear coats and stuff. So this kind of sweater, not necessarily like a yoke sweater or something, but this kind of sweater that I would wear in lieu of wearing a jacket or a coat, that's my favorite kind of sweater to knit. More than just like one, like a pretty one to wear inside. I like these sort of cardigan type, and some aren't cardigans. I've done errands that are like pullovers and Icelandic pullovers. That's really why I wanted to, knit, is to knit those kind of things, and then you get into the whole, like, then you can knit the mittens to match the sweaters, and but these are my favorite. One, and a lot of those I've never shown like on the podcast, just because I use them for, outside. But I will try to remember as they come out of the cedar closet to, show them to you. I know my, as far as wearing sweaters, I think probably like my favorite sweater to wear is my Round the Bend jacket, which is another Meg Swanson design, but it's an all garter like jacket, and I did it out of 2 strands of unspun Icelandic. This is just 1 strand, but that was so much fun to knit. I knit that 4 years ago. I knit that like at this time of the year 4 years ago, because I know I was in knitting seclusion then, because after my chemo was finished, my blood counts were so low that I just could, like, had to stay home and knit, and I would leave the house like twice in a week. I, went to the grocery store during the Packer game on Sundays, because there's nobody in the grocery store during the Packer game on Sundays, and I took my mom to get her hair done every Friday. And then, so yeah, so those were like the 2 times that I would leave. But those are like that's like my favorite, like sweaters to knit. Anyway, I want to close this off because it is this beautiful day. I need to go take a walk and just soak up the sunshine, because this won't last long. But I hope you all have a really great week. If you're going to Rhinebeck, have fun. Have a ton of fun. If you're Canadian, I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. And until I see you next week, from my heart to yours, happy knitting.